You can find many key business districts in the Netherlands. Some of the larger ones are Zuidas, Amsterdam, often called a financial mile, found in the south of the city. Rotterdam Central District, found around the city's central station, and Beatrixkwartier in The Hague. The Hague, of course, being the seat of the Dutch government and a hub for international institutions. Today, I'm breaking ground on what will be a major business, governmental and financial district in our fictional city of Noevorden. The checklist for this episode is vast. I'll need to pick assets that scale well with the city, introduce the city's first skyscrapers, integrate fully the bike and tram networks, give our Sims plenty of walkable areas and access to leisure opportunities, and I'll try and satisfy that commercial demand, but above all, I'll really be focusing on the details to create a truly believable Dutch-style modern city centre. In the last episode, we put in the foundations of the transport networks, bikes, trams, road and metro, and with all that in place, I'm ready to drill right the way down to street level, connect all the dots and create a really special area. This one turned out exceptionally, I'm really proud of it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So I'm going to kick things off by picking the assets that are going to shape really the base of the skyline itself. This is really going to lean heavily into the new Skyscrapers Creator Pack by Revo. Phenomenal pack, it's going to be so good to get this in, but one thing I need to make sure is to really just make sure that we don't overshadow the rest of the city by picking assets that are maybe too big. This big beauty right here, I just need it in. I need it in the city. I think that's probably going to represent just exactly as high as we're going to go. It might be a bit too big, but it's my city, I don't care, and it's absolutely going to go in, especially once we get the upgrades on it as well. I'm not going to run through every detail in this pack, I'm really just going to grab the stuff that I need, but one thing to note, with these upgrades they do add some real functionality to the game. So this one for example, you can pick a hospital upgrade, let's pop that on. It looks sensational, it's absolutely going to be in the city, even if I don't necessarily need the extra healthcare. I reckon it's going to be a worthwhile example just to get everything out in the pack and just get an idea of what's going to be too big and what is not going to fit. The Silver Dragon out there is obviously going to be too big, but this one I reckon will 100% will find a space for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful asset as well. That Docklands Tower, that is 100% going to find a space. Not too sure about this one, again, it might just be a little bit imposing for the rest of the city. Now of course this will be set back out towards the water, but we'll see. Now I don't often make public requests for anything, but this underground parking, give us it, we need it in the game, please. Hopefully we can maybe have a look at getting something like that in the editor, and that's something I would definitely like to have plenty more of. I'm going to be adding our own underground parking a little bit later on, but if we had something like this it would look great, wouldn't it? So I'm going to go very quickly and just lay out the rest of the asset pack here and just try and make our decision in terms of what we're going to use and what we're not. Guys, just one thing, if you are going to skip the video at any point, do not miss the end, the cinematics are fantastic. I keep getting drawn back towards this asset, I'll be honest with you guys, especially down here. I think that would make a great frontage along, along a major road. Down here, this building is 100% going to be coming in. It's an absolute beaut, so that is a definite. Along here, this one with the upgrade, yeah, lovely. I think there was too much open space on the ground floor for that one, and I think I'll use it, but I think I'll probably try and cover up the parking with perhaps a ploppable asset. That last one there was an easy upgrade, didn't take up too much space and didn't add any additional height that I was looking for. So fire station upgrade on that one, perfect. Fire station can be a wee bit difficult sometimes to try and get it to fit in just the way that we want to in this particular build. Although there is a Dutch modern one which is pretty nice, and that will probably make a few appearances actually as the city grows. Now sadly it is going to be time to say goodbye to a few of these. I think this is the Sears Tower, isn't it? Just too big, and again I don't know what this building is based on, but it is an absolute piece of art, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. Love the glow in the sunshine as well, but unfortunately again just the scale of it is just going to be a little bit too much, a little bit too big, and I'm a little bit jealous of anybody who's going to be able to get this in their build. But yeah, has to go as well, same as the Sears Tower. This one however is going to be a wee bit different. The Silver Dragon, the main building is, I think this is the tallest one in fact, but what I'm interested in for this particular build are the upgrade buildings. These are stunning, absolutely. Look at the attention to detail on these things. So I think potentially I'll be looking to use these as perhaps the static ploppables if we get these from StarQ. I think they'll make a great addition. I think they'll complement the style of the buildings in this particular district really, really well. And you could have your own little mini district of those ones realistically, but the main building was just too much. For this big complex, I am just going to delete that and just snap it to the building, just the road rather, just so I know it's going to be there. I think realistically, this is probably going to be its final point in terms of the orientation. I'm not going to be, now just to be clear, I'm not going to be building this entire area, everything this side of the train station. It's far too big, it would take several weeks and certainly not in one episode. But I really do want to get sort of placeholders down and really form that skyline. Once I've got the big buildings in place and I know exactly where they are, it's going to make things an awful lot easier to get the supporting buildings and surrounding buildings and all the space in between the buildings, which is going to be really important and what I'm focusing on in this particular episode. But of course, we've got a few more episodes to complete the whole area, and it's going to be a lot of work, but it should be a lot of fun. Let's just take a minute, step back and see how that sits up against the water. I reckon that is going to work pretty well once we have the rest of the buildings in there. Nice. I'm going to set myself another little physical reminder here in that I want to hook this up to the ferry stop, so I'm going to put that in. Obviously we'll revisit later on, we don't have anything like a ferry network on the go at this particular point in time, but I reckon that is it for that little corner. Let's crack on and we'll get the rest of it done. I reckon overall I'm pretty happy with the overall selection with the assets and really the differences between the heights, between these bigger assets as well. I'll continue to pick some smaller ones, sort of support buildings if you like, that perhaps will affect the skyline a little bit less. But before we get on to that, what I want to do is pick a few leisure opportunities, or a few leisure assets rather, that our Sims can sort of visit. And I want to, in this central area, really have a bit of a walkable area, pedestrianised area, and we'll make it nice and easy for the bikes to get around as well. Along this major road, I think we're going to need a couple of petrol stations, so again, this one is just more of a reminder for a later episode that I want to get that particular asset in, and we'll maybe get one on each side of the road, but we'll see how that pans out later on. Same sort of idea here along beside our yard, and I think I want to get some more historic assets. I think potentially that little corner we could maybe get some sort of grimier assets, maybe a little bit of industrial perhaps in there as well. One feature of some of the larger buildings, particularly in the Rotterdam area, are having these really large towers, but on the ground floor we have a sort of almost like surrounding buildings that are maybe 5 or 6 stories high. So I want to create this, and there's no better one than using the Corona building here. The add-ons for these are obviously matching perfectly with the larger tower, so it's going to give us scope to use it as a bit of a blueprint for future development as we sort of build out the rest of the district in later episodes. We don't have to attach it to the main building, so we can have it across the road as well, and that sort of extends the blueprint of the original development over and past a couple of extra buildings there, the little hotel and the car park building as well. I am going to add a couple of smaller, I think these hotel assets, they're pretty cute, they work together and you can string quite a few of them together, make little mini blocks if you like, but I'm not going to go too mad on it. I'm just going to do the single block and we'll figure out what we're going to have beside it. Get rid of that branding. The big mall building I think is welcome as well. Now, one thing I do want to introduce when we're putting in these buildings is a good mix of uses. I want commercial, office, we're going to be adding some residential in here as well. We'll try and make the place pretty busy. Along this end, again, I'm just going to add a few extra of the older buildings. Like in previous episode, I wanted to have the impression that perhaps we've got some really, historic buildings here that perhaps, survived a war or redevelopment or whatever, and I think it's a nice contrast to the modern buildings that it's really going to be surrounded by. So obviously in the last episode, if you saw that, we got all of the main networks in here, and all the hard stuff in terms of planning and seeing how things are going to look is really all done, which means that I can really crack on with the details in this one. But that said, there will be a few opportunities to extend that. So I think really in terms of the bike lane, I just wanted to extend that around that little side street. The car park, one thing I did want to avoid was to try and avoid bottlenecks. So when we make a car park, quite often you'll get queues of cars trying to get in and out of the thing, and it can cause backups and some traffic issues. So to try and negate that, I've created a couple of extra exits and entrances into the car park that we have, pretty large underground one, and I'm hoping that will spread the traffic out in terms of route finding, and with a bit of luck we'll try and avoid those traffic jams that we can maybe see elsewhere. Again, I'm going to set myself a little reminder here with the elevated paths. I think having these buildings is essentially like twin towers almost, if you like, coming over the city entrance could be a really nice unique feature, and I definitely want to try and put them together. Now this isn't the final final orientation or placement. Again, we're going to be really focusing on the train station side of things for today. Now, I wasn't convinced about having a dog park in here, but actually the aesthetics of it really just fit in perfectly for what I wanted. I wanted a really sort of natural looking space within these buildings, and it was a good fit for it. One of the things I set out to do when I was creating this area was to have a lot of networks really dense and compact and up close together. And here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the sort of side streets or frontage roads, I guess, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be really important because we can't have development on the highway roads, and I really wanted to make sure that we have a low traffic area and a safe space that we can cycle on and we can walk on, and we can get deliveries and all the rest of it on as well. Now there'll be quite a lot of work to make this look good later on, but obviously you'll get to see that of course as well. And here and there what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of detail, but I really wanted to concentrate on getting the blocks filled up. Once the blocks are in there with the asset selection, then of course the rest of it's just ground level detailing, surface prop work and all that kind of stuff as well. This particular block I used the EE office building. Lovely building. I'm going to be using that plenty more throughout the city as well, but I've used the functional one, two of the functional ones that we have up against the road. I used a ploppable version on the road that's up against the highway because I didn't have space to get a road in. And then again, much like the Rotterdam type buildings where we have a tower and then sort of smaller buildings or smaller levels below it, I'm going to use that same sort of idea as well. So what I'm going to do just now is going to continue to build this out, and I'll just pop in and out of the chat here and just give you a quick update with what I'm doing. Using some of the UK flats here, which are pretty nice. Wanted to make sure that we didn't have anything in terms of the parking here. Again, they can use underground parking, use the bikes, of course, we're going to encourage that at every level. Plenty of ground detailing here, and again we're going to use the same decals, Real Vision ones here, same as the roundabout beside it. Now where we can see little opportunities to add a little bit of surface work in and a few extra paths to connect things, then we're going to do so. As many shortcuts as we can, having run through the buildings is very welcome. And although this is a dense city centre, I definitely still want to create some green spaces. Very important, I think, and it breaks things up visually as well, doesn't it? Now one of the challenges in this build is to try and avoid bottlenecks. Now obviously things will get busy and that's just the ebbs and flow of the traffic in this game, but where things are obvious we'll need to take a minute and perhaps try and reroute things. And what's nice here is that we're going to have bike lanes. The bike lanes are essentially going to feed into the pedestrian area, and the bikes will use them providing that they don't have a preferred bike only method elsewhere in the city. And that provided a nice little challenge when we a little mini game almost when I was doing this build, which is cool. Now in this video I'm not spending a huge amount of time elsewhere in the build, but one thing I do want to do is just to try and encourage people to use the bikes and then use public transport. So I'm going to provide some parking beside our metro station. Now obviously the parking that I've put in there isn't functional, but let's provide some additional functional parking directly on the road. Certainly makes sense here where we have a tram stop and a metro as well. I'm going to do the same idea along here at our other metro station within our university building, and I reckon this will get pretty much immediate use, and it's nice to see that the actual metro is getting pretty good use already as well. Now I touched on the parking issues on the main build area today, but I think that I am going to, when I come back into the main city, I am going to have to revisit and provide some additional spaces. First thing I'm going to do, this isn't particularly the best place for it, but obviously we're going to be developing this out later on. But I think over at the university where we have these more modern buildings, it kind of makes sense to use the overground parking. I'm not going to be using too much of that. I'd prefer to go underground or use the parking assets that come with the Dutch pack. But I reckon where we can, if we get an opportunity, we'll maybe slot them in here and there. I think most of the parking spots are completely full in the city, so again it's something that we absolutely have to have a look at. So just like last episode, I'm going to continue to use our surface tools and net lanes to do our bike lanes. A few guys shouted out on the last video that there is a new mod that changes the colour of the bike lanes. I've not had a look at this yet. This was recorded obviously before it. I hope that I can get the colour just right because it would save me an awful lot of time. But if it ain't right, I'm not going to use it. But yeah, I'll be having a look at that over the next day or two, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will fit pretty nice. So to change things up a little bit and keep things interesting while I'm doing the build, I'll just pick a few areas, and as the networks are kind of done around it, we'll just add a little bit of detail, fill a few gaps, get the right surfaces in, and try and provide a little bit of visual interest as we go along. Sometimes when you're playing the game, you realise that you have been missing something you didn't realise you were missing, and one of them was actually a greater selection of fences. I think the Bridges and Port DLC added an additional 3 of them, and they all look pretty good, and they've got a space in the city for sure. I think having it just bordered off and fenced off, I think is definitely worth taking your time to do, to be honest. And again, it just provides a little bit of a border, if you like, between different surfaces. Obviously you can use some net lanes for borders, but I think having that coupled with the fences or one or the other really works pretty well. And sometimes to get a really good effect, you don't need to go mad. A couple of decals, a little bit of vegetation, a few props, and you can create some really nice areas, even if it's quite a large area. And that is exactly what I'm doing here, and how good does that look already? And we're not finished yet. Now, to kind of further push that point, sometimes the borders don't have to be net lanes, they can just simply be drawn out with with surfaces. And again, here along the car park, we're just going to add a little bit of contrast and a slightly different colour. I think it's a little bit too dark, so if I remember right, I'm going to be replacing it with something a little bit brighter, or a little bit less jarring, if you like, in terms of colour changes. And yeah, we're going to use one of Generic's lemons ones there, but what a big difference that makes, doesn't it? So super easy stuff, anybody can do that, and obviously it creates that little bit of extra interest. Here I'm going to kick off the pedestrian zone. I'm going to use some of the wider paths here, and I'm going to combine that with some of the 1 unit wide paths as well. That's the one-way system, and I think that big building that we had there was just a little bit too big in terms of scale, so I'm going to drag this one in. I think it's going to provide a really nice centre point up against our sort of tram, what would you call it? It's not tram depot, tram exchange, tram interchange, I don't know. You can tell me in the comments what that should be called, but I think from a scale point of view, I think it was a better fit. That one-way system and using the smaller assets is just going to mean that we can get the buildings a little bit denser, a little bit closer up together, and I think that's very much what we want to try and keep as and when we can here. And again, it's the same idea using the other networks, using the bike paths and pedestrian paths, and it's really just to try and keep everything nice and dense. The existing sort of custom path network that we've put in there with the invisible paths, we can hook them up, and that means people can use the station, subway, the bikes, and they can just walk directly into our pedestrian area. Now, I'm going to use some of the mixed buildings, and I think it's going to be a mix of the Chinese ones and the US Southwest ones as well. And I really want something sort of blocky and modern, and I really want it to fit the buildings that are going to be surrounding it. And I want everything to look like it was roughly sort of built at the same time. The bike traffic was getting a little bit manic, so I decided to just hook up an extra couple of connections and a little roundabout. Didn't help, so we'll get to that later. Bit of an awkward area here behind that big signature building, so I thought one of the larger bike parking could be a good shout as well. We can provide a couple of shortcuts here and try and encourage people to use it. And again, plopping these buildings down, we get lots of people moving in, which is cool, and they're not bringing the taxis in either, which is nice to see. I've gone ahead and decided to plop down a couple of the big plaza assets that I think these were free in bridges and ports if I remember correctly. Obviously that's going to fit in pretty nice. If you have a look at the real life examples, there tends to be some open areas, might not necessarily be as big as this, but we're going to be bumping up the scale a little bit for this particular building, Noevorden. Those benches are looking pretty jazzy. I like the injection of colour here actually. Again, I noticed here that we had a little bit of an issue with the one-way system, so I just replaced that particular part of road, and we should have things flowing just a little bit better. This will be a bit of a bottleneck. This is one of two of the tunnels that we have. I'm not necessarily adverse to creating a third one if it continues to get busier, and I'd probably expect it to do so. But again, as we add the more transit options, we should potentially see a little bit less. It'll be interesting to see how it actually balances out as we build on. One really time-consuming job was getting the surfaces done in this pedestrian area. I'm going to use the same sort of method I used in the university campus and just use the big pedestrian paths, and then just keep those little bits of detail, within the nodes section as well. Looks really good. It's one of these things that you kind of just have to zone out and just crack on and do it. But even though it's not a big area, it did take an enormous amount of time. But I should zoom in here in just a minute and give you guys a little bit of a better look at it, and I think you will agree that it was definitely worthwhile. Now it's time to really concentrate on filling these gaps and the detailing. With the placement of most of the buildings in place, obviously there will be another big block still to go, but I really wanted to focus just now on making sure that I'm happy at things at a street level, and that means little fine adjustments, making sure that I'm happy with the actual surface choices, making sure that we don't have any weird sort of awkward looking changes, from one surface to the other. So again, that'll be putting in a border of some description. I want to make sure that we have enough props, I want to make sure that we have enough borders, and make sure that we have everything connected, and all of our little shortcuts and all of our little connections are going to be put in place here as well. There will be a few opportunities throughout the build to squeeze a few parks in here, and again we'll kind of give them that custom look by just changing the surfaces. That's pretty much it, but all nice and functional, and again it just adds a little bit of leisure and it adds a little bit of visual interest to the city as well. But really important, once we do that, we want to make sure that it's connected and kind of feeling like a living, breathing part of the city as well. So we'll give it a nice bit of vegetation, bit of shade, and again a little bit of visual interest. I am going to fix the greenness of this particular tunnel. We're just going to use the net lanes, bring them down to the correct surface, and with a little bit of adjustments on manipulation mode, we can get that covered up quite nicely. This is definitely one of my favourite features of the build altogether. I love that little underpass, it's so cool. Now I wanted to have something a little bit different on here, and I'm going to use some of the cemetery assets and one of the fire station assets, and I think it looks like a little bit of modern art, I think, there to the left hand side, or maybe public toilets. I'll let you guys decide on that one. And the fire station asset, perhaps it looks like an old windmill. Perhaps it was there when the canals get filled in. Who knows? Again, you can make up the history of that in your own mind, I guess. So I was pretty much approaching the final look of the bike network here, and I noticed that they took a real preference to coming over this side of the development. That in itself isn't too bad of a thing, but if they're not using the other paths, then it is a little bit unbalanced and everybody's just funneling through the same place, which is going to be an issue. So I decided to delete that path and just see how things worked out and let it run on a little bit. Again, I'm going to use another bit of a frontage road here. This, I'd like to have it as like a main shopping road almost, you know, where you have that sort of mixed use buildings, and I think it's going to look pretty good once we've got the extra detailing on here. Again, it's one of these time consuming things, but it'll be a nice feature I think, especially once we start building on the other side of the road, and it should make a little bit more sense just to see how things are going to pan out, at least the way I've got it in my mind anyway. The end of these buildings provide a nice little spot to put in some additional parking, so I'm going to make the most of that. Now I decided to put in a few additional invisible bike lanes. I have no idea if these things work or not, to be honest with you. I didn't necessarily see anybody using it, but I threw them in there anyway, and it's something I need to come back at and have a look and just see in fact if it is used or not. Here was a really awkward spot. I couldn't really find anything decent to put in there, so I used one of these static ploppables. I'm not sure exactly which one this is. Maybe this is part of the college asset, Japanese college potentially, but I thought it gives us a nice sort of, you know, almost harsh, you know, brutalist sort of look here on the corner, and I thought it would look pretty cool, so that went in. I must say, I do like these little areas around the back. It's a nice little filler, isn't it? And we're almost done here with the main shopping street. Really, it's just extra prop works to be done. Now, I thought I'd maybe go for a little bike overpass and a walking overpass, but in fact I thought tunnels were probably going to be a better option here, and that's exactly what I decided to do. I'm not too sure if the Sims actually use the path network that goes through the train station, you know, as a shortcut, so I wanted to give them another option to get through here. Obviously we've got just bikes only on the other side, so here we're going to do pedestrian and we're going to do bikes combined, and again, it's just to kind of free up a little bit of the you know, the traffic, so to speak, on the other side of the building. And again, it's, you know, it doesn't have to be just two, we can add extra ones here as well. Now, a nice little bonus here, we've got this feature, little happy accident. In fact, it looks really cool, and that's essentially like the tunnel stuff coming through the coming through the terrain. Usually I would avoid that at all costs, but it looks really good with the net lines on top of it, so we are going to be keeping that. Getting plenty of action already, and again, we'll do the usual stuff with the net lanes and to make sure that it's red all the way through. Again, maybe a little bit too much action, and that's something that we can adjust and try and see if we can create a few extra shortcuts here and there and convert some of that traffic to use some of the other tunnel options. So we've had to really add quite a lot of props here to this street, and I think it was really necessary. It's in fact quite a wide open area in fact, and without it, it would look a little bit strange. But again, it's going to give us a real nice base to have a bit of a main shopping street down here later on. So we've just got a few finishing touches really to put in place, and then we can have a look at some extended cinematic shots at the end, and we can all have a little look at how things turned out. So one of the key things I really wanted for this area is to make sure that the actual train station is really well integrated, and I think we've managed that pretty well here. I might reduce the amount of trees right up against the station, but I think at the moment it's a pretty good mix, and I think it's a pretty reasonable balance. Those buildings aren't overshadowing the station themselves, although in the real life examples they absolutely do. On the other side of the station, we can see the effect of having that additional bike path. Again, it's pretty busy, but things are actually still moving, and it's really nice to see this one coming into action as well. Really cool. All these kind of parallel networks are really nice. Really nice. I'm really happy with it. And again, on the other side, we can see pretty busy, but again, things are actually still moving pretty well. If you've made it this far, guys, stick around to the end. I've got some extended cinematics here, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's definitely some of my best work, I think, certainly in terms of really compact city centre stuff, and I am extremely proud of it. So thanks again for watching. I'll leave the cinematics with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.